Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 270 based on novel. So let's start. Tang Wutong lifted her left hand, and a pitch-black hammer with golden patterns appeared in her hand. She shook her wrist, and her clear sky hammer hammered the air. A sonic blast sounded. Within 100 meters, all plants were decimated. A huge depression was even created in the ground. Feng Ling groaned and spat out fresh blood. Her eyes were filled with horror. As Tang Wutong waved that hammer, she only felt that the air had consolidated and turned into a huge hammer 100 meters in diameter. After this, the huge hammer struck her. The Dark Phoenix's flame scattered and disappeared. Her legs also collapsed into the ground. She couldn't resist at all as her powers were completely suppressed. Zhongli Wu's staff was already in his hand. Avenging spirits started to rise around him. No matter what, he was still a rank 98 title Dolor. He couldn't wait and watch as he was killed. What he had to do was delay his death. The death god demon puppet's shadow appeared behind him. Avenging spirits then appeared. They started to burn as they cried tragically, turning into balls of fire. After this, they were devoured by the death god demon puppet. Zhongli Wu already looked very ferocious right now. Feng Ling looked up into the sky and roared. She instantly turned into a black fire phoenix. As she roared, she unleashed a strong spiritual blast. She was unleashing her true body. Dragon wings opened up behind Tang Wutong as she summoned the golden dragon spear with her right hand. After this, she pointed it at Zhongli Wu while she waved her hammer in the air. Every time the Dark Phoenix wanted to get close to her, she would immediately be flung away by invisible air currents. Every time she was hammered, the flames on her body would immediately weaken. This was a difference in absolute power. The sunlight behind Tang Wutong got stronger and stronger. A strong aura of light illuminated Zhongli Wu's body, such that he started to smoke. However, he tolerated the pain. His death god demon puppet became more and more real as the flames of avenging spirits were continuously poured into it. Zhongli Wu's strength came from these avenging spirits, but right now, he actually burned all of them. This showed that he was going all out. Hui Yuhao was standing not far away from Tang Wutong. However, he appeared very relaxed. He was just acting as an audience. Suddenly, the strong aura released by the Dark Phoenix stopped in mid-air after it forcibly resisted Tang Wutong's hammer. Feng Ling's original form was slowly revealed. She looked very pale, and she spat out fresh blood. Her body also started to burn. It wasn't just her soul power that had been combusted. The power of her soul was also burning. Wutong, be careful. Hui Yuhao warned. Although Feng Ling was the vice-sect leader of the Holy Ghost Church by name, she was in fact being controlled by Zhongli Wu. For him, she was willing to burn her own soul and martial soul. It didn't seem like it was on her willing part. Feng Ling screamed tragically into the sky. Her body suddenly turned into a huge ball of black-red fire. After this, she instantly fused with her own phoenix flames. Suddenly, the fire phoenix turned completely black. She fluttered her wings with force. This time, she blocked Tang Wutong's clear sky hammer. After this, she fell from the sky, not towards Tang Wutong, but towards Zhongli Wu. A cold smile appeared on Hui Yuhao's face. Without a doubt, Feng Ling and Zhongli Wu were unleashing a secret spell of the Holy Ghost Church. As for what the effect would be, Hui Yuhao was unclear. However, he knew that it should be rather powerful, since it involved burning both Feng Ling and Zhongli Wu's avenging spirits as the price to pay. Perhaps it might temporarily offer them the powers of an ultimate Dolor. After all, the powers of evil soul masters were rather weird and mysterious. However, how would Hui Yuhao give Zhongli Wu an opportunity to do so? His figure flashed, and he came in front of Tang Wutong. He opened his arms wide and hugged her. A grin appeared on Tang Wutong's face. Her dragon wings reversed and engulfed Hui Yuhao. Following this, their bodies shone brightly. A vertical eye that shone with strange light silently appeared. Gold, Jade green, dark blue, deep purple and other colors flashed and alternated within this vertical eye. In the next instant, a beam of light that fused many different shades of colors shot out from the vertical eye. Hui Yuhao had to grasp the perfect timing. When he finally hugged Tang Wutong, it was just when Fengling and Zhongli Wu fused. At this moment, Zhongli Wu couldn't possibly move. The strange, multicolored beam of light caused the vast region of space around it to be illuminated with a layer of strange light as it shot out. Zhongli Wu turned dark red as Fengling fused with him. His death god demon puppet was fusing with his real body, and his aura was rapidly becoming stronger and stronger. It was at this moment that the multicolored beam of light was in front of him. Zhongli Wu only felt his entire body shaking. After this, he felt as if the entire world had become different. He felt weirdly relaxed. It was a relaxation that came from deep within his heart. It was very comfortable. However, he could no longer feel his immense soul power. The death god demon puppet seemed to have been snatched from him. His entire body became a golden statue. His immense power instantly vanished, like melting ice and snow. It was the golden road amidst withering resplendence, Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong's powerful fusion skill. The fusion skill unleashed by two individuals who were close to being ultimate Dolor had in fact transcended the boundaries of this world. It was at the tier of demigods. No matter how strong the secret spell Zhongli Wu and Fengling had used was, how could it compare to the near-godly strength of Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong's attack? Fengling's strength disappeared along with her soul. No traces were left behind. Zhongli Wu's death god demon puppet was also snatched away. Even his soul power was halved. When he struggled to escape, it felt as if he was older by tens of years. As Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong's powers changed, their golden road also changed. The withering didn't just happen on martial souls and soul skills. It also happened on life energy. Zhongli Wu was already very old. After he was subjected to this golden road, his life energy was greatly drained. He seemed like an old man who was on the verge of death right now. Impossible, this is impossible. This is power that doesn't belong to humans. Even if it's my mother or Elder Long, they don't possess such strength. Why is it they can demonstrate such power? Zhongli Wu whined. He didn't even use his last trick before he was already completely destroyed. This was too heavy of a blow to him, as the price he had to pay was his life. Beams and beams of light shot from the distance and only stopped when they were in front of Hui Yuhao. After this, they turned into balls of light and separately fused with his body. Zhongli Wu appeared even more grim when he saw these lights. Since his spirits were back, it also meant that all the powerful individuals from the Holy Ghost Church were dealt with. None of them was alive anymore. The Holy Ghost Church was really wiped out. Hui Yuhao, you destroyed my Holy Ghost Church. Even if I become a ghost, I won't let you off. Zhongli Wu was filled with hatred as he looked at Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao sighed and said, "It's a pity. You can't even become a ghost. You've harmed too many people in this life. Even if you become a ghost or an avenging spirit, you'll still be punished by the heavens. However, I won't give you that chance out of respect for Elder Long and Elder Yi Shishui. Do you think that you still can become a ghost?" As he spoke, Hui Yuhao's eyes turned golden. He slowly walked towards Zhongli Wu. His immense spiritual power turned into a huge barrier, engulfing them. As his terrifying spiritual undulations spread, they were capable of disabling the spiritual strength Zhongli Wu possessed. At this moment, the entire area shook tremendously. Terrifying spiritual power descended from the sky. A low-pitched, dominant, and cold voice echoed in the air. "Who is it? How dare you disturb my sleep? Who dares to carry out a massacre in the evil demon forest?" As this voice sounded, the sky actually distorted and turned dark. Pitch-black clouds started to crack. It was as if the entire sky had cracked open. A huge eye appeared in mid-air, focused on where Hui Yuhao, Tang Wutong, and Zhongli Wu were. "Sovereign, you're finally here. Please punish these two who are here to disturb the peace of the evil demon forest." Zhongli Wu screamed hysterically. The reinforcements he had been waiting for finally arrived. Yes, this was the Holy Ghost Church's final backer. If not for the permission that the evil-eye tyrant king gave, how would the Holy Ghost Church have been allowed to set up their headquarters in the evil demon forest? Even though it was only at the edge of the forest, it showed the relationship they shared with the evil-eye tyrant king. With Yi Shishui and Long Xiaoyao around, they had the right to negotiate with the evil-eye tyrant king. This time, the Holy Ghost Church wouldn't have resorted to moving if not for the fact that Yi Shishui and Long Xiaoyao felt that their lives were about to reach their end. The evil-eye tyrant king wasn't some kind soul. Once the Holy Ghost Church could no longer stand at the same footing as him, he would definitely not mind them being destroyed. This was even though the Holy Ghost Church had given him a lot of benefits over the past few years. The evil demon forest was his territory. Of course he wouldn't want any humans to remain here. A beam of purplish gold light flashed. Zhong Liwu shook heavily as he screamed hysterically. The look in his eyes dimmed instantly before it gradually lost its color. No matter who came, Hui Yuhao was still determined to kill him. As the sect leader of the Holy Ghost Church, he had to die. This was non-negotiable. From this moment, the Holy Ghost Church had wiped off the face of this earth. This evil soul master sect, which had harmed many lives, was forever gone. Human, you've offended my dignity. You need to pay the price. The evil-eye tyrant king's voice sounded. Following this, a dark red beam of light that was more than a kilometer long descended from the sky. It engulfed both Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong. Hui Yuhao was once been subjected to the evil-eye tyrant king's attack. Back then, he had relied on his spiritual immunity to avert disaster before he fled the evil demon forest. This time, he was no longer the same Hui Yuhao who had only just become a soul sage. Hui Yuhao's eyes were full of passion. Behind him, his huge vertical eye suddenly brightened. A rose-gold radiance instantly shone. It was his martial soul true body, the Eye of the Azura. Compared to the dark red beam of light that descended from the sky, the rose-gold light that Hui Yuhao emitted was evidently weaker. The two beams of light clashed in the air. The gloomy clouds shook tremendously. The huge dark red beam was blocked just like that. Its color was also quickly changing. There was an extra layer of icy blue light around it. Furthermore, it was moving back towards its origin. Spiritual shock. Hui Yuhao had unleashed the true strength of his yin-yang complement soul power. What? The evil-eye tyrant king was astonished as he groaned. After this, the dark red beam of light quickly retracted all the way until it was only 10 meters long. After this, a terrifying spiritual windstorm was unleashed in mid-air. The sky instantly turned red, as if it were a patch of bloody sea. Tremendous spiritual undulations caused all the soul beasts in the evil demon forest to lie prone on the ground. They didn't dare to move at all. They felt the rage coming from the evil-eye tyrant king. Here, the evil-eye tyrant king was the sovereign. Tang Wutong came to Hui Yuhao's side. She saw how serious Hui Yuhao was. After one clash, Hui Yuhao's nose and mouth were already bleeding. He's really capable of challenging Di Qian. When their spiritual powers clashed, Hui Yuhao felt an indescribable pressure. The evil-eye tyrant king had actually fused both his immense spiritual and spatial power. Hui Yuhao had fused his ultimate ice into his spiritual power, whereas the evil-eye tyrant king's spiritual power was filled with a raging spatial storm. The terrifying spatial power almost tore Hui Yuhao's spiritual origin apart. Let's go up. Hui Yuhao held Tang Wutong's hand. They rose up and turned into projections. Instantly, they were high up in the sky. He had sworn not to easily kill soul beasts. There were many soul beasts living in this forest. Given the powers of the evil-eye tyrant king, many lives would be killed if they fought on the ground. This was why he brought the fight up to the sky. The immense pressure that was originally in the sky vanished as the terrifying spiritual windstorm raged. When Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong passed through that windstorm, they finally saw the evil-eye tyrant king. He was simply gigantic. He was a huge eye with a diameter of more than 300 meters. There was a total of 81 tentacles that poked out from him, each of them around 500 meters long, and wriggling in the air. Behind him, everything was dark red. It was an ocean of soul power. This was why it felt as if the apocalypse was coming when he appeared. Greetings, evil-eyed tyrant. I am Hui Yu Hao. I did not come into the evil demon forest to disturb your sleep. It's just that the Holy Ghost Church has been killing human lives. I had to get rid of them. I seek your forgiveness. Hui Yu Hao said calmly to the evil-eyed tyrant king. He had no intention of getting into the bad books of the evil-eyed tyrant king. After all, he was one of the strongest creatures on the continent. He controlled the evil demon forest. All the soul beasts in the Sun-Moon continent were under his charge. The spirit system was already achieving results as time passed. To further advertise it, the help of stronger creatures was needed. If he could convince the evil-eyed tyrant king that spirit transmission was a possibility, it would be very helpful in promoting more harmonious relations between humans and soul beasts. This was why Hui Yu Hao was so polite. The evil-eyed tyrant king opened his eye wide to look at Hui Yu Hao. His voice echoed, "Human, you are very powerful. You are the only human who's been able to directly challenge my spiritual power. However, you've killed humans that have an agreement with us. I can't just let this matter rest. You must pay the price." Hui Yu Hao said, "Evil-eyed tyrant, don't think that humans are weak just because you're strong. I don't wish to become enemies with you. However, this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. We won't accede to any conditions. We just don't want to turn hostile with you. If you want to turn hostile, that's up to you. You can see whether you can take advantage of us." He. The evil-eyed tyrant king suddenly laughed loudly. His 81 tentacles kept on dancing in the air. The sky distorted once again. Immense spiritual power surged in the air. The all-engulfing pressure appeared once again. Hui Yu Hao was also in admiration of this evil-eyed tyrant king. He was able to project his spiritual sea outside of his body and create such powerful spiritual undulations. Hui Yu Hao didn't even think he could do that. Perhaps he might possibly be able to do that once he formed his third soul core. However, just like he had said, he wasn't afraid of the evil-eyed tyrant king. His confidence came from his abilities. "Human, it's been a while since someone spoke to me like this. Very well, I'd really like to see how strong you are. If you can escape from my hands today, I'll let this matter rest. Otherwise, you shall remain as compost for this forest." As he spoke, the evil-eyed tyrant king's 81 tentacles turned scarlet red. They struck toward Hui Yu Hao and Tang Wutong from all directions. He was indeed very fierce. When he dared to leave his own territory to challenge Diaitian, it was a testament to how impulsive he was. It was impossible that he didn't sense that Tang Wutong was close to becoming an ultimate Delor. However, he still chose to fight them despite that. Although Hui Yu Hao had sworn never to actively kill soul beasts, he wouldn't show any mercy if he knew that a soul beast wanted his life. Furthermore, he still lacked one soul ring. He lacked the 9th soul ring of his spirit eyes. In this world, there was no one more suitable than the evil-eyed tyrant king for his 9th soul ring. Hui Yu Hao had twin martial souls. If he were an ordinary soul master, he couldn't possibly absorb the soul ring generated after the evil-eyed tyrant king was killed. This was because the energy within it would simply be too much for him to handle. However, Hui Yu Hao was different. His cultivation was already very close to that of an ultimate Delor. He even had twin soul cores. It was possible for him to absorb the evil-eyed tyrant king's soul ring. Hui Yu Hao wore a heavy look on his face when he faced the tentacles. He didn't directly unleash his domain-type abilities. The evil-eyed tyrant king was simply too strong. Although it was his first time fighting him, Hui Yu Hao had faced Diaitian before. He was well aware that creatures like the evil-eyed tyrant king and the beast god were at the peak of this world. Not even an ordinary ultimate Delor could fight them. The evil-eyed tyrant king's control of spatial power was not inferior to the beast god. This was why he could only prevail by surprise instead of fighting the long way. If the evil-eyed tyrant king could even project his spiritual sea out of his body, how dense would his soul power be? Fog started to rise from Hui Yu Hao's body. His morning dew dagger was already in his grasp. Tang Wutong was still holding her hammer in her left hand and spear in her right hand, and Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection was fully linked to her. They weren't afraid even as they faced the evil-eyed tyrant king. They were only excited. Their powers had just increased, but their foundations weren't very steady yet. Ever since they had reached rank 95, they hadn't had a chance to properly consolidate their cultivations. To better comprehend their own cultivations and control the newfound powers they had accumulated, the best way was to fight. It was just like when Hui Yuhao suggested fighting 10 soul masters on his own. It was after that incident that he built his foundation to become a transcendent allure. Although the evil-eyed tyrant king was strong, Hui Yuhao was very confident of retreating. Even if he couldn't win, he could still escape. Since this was the case, he was going to fight heartily. He wanted to use this as an opportunity to increase his live fighting experience. Using his ghost shadow perplexing track, Hui Yuhao shifted with Tang Wutong. With the help of his spiritual detection, it was as if only one of them was using their instant teleportation, even though both of them had used it at the same time. They crossed more than 100 meters instantly. Hui Yuhao appeared in a region of space where there was only one tentacle. He slashed his morning dew dagger. In the sky, an icy blue light projection flashed before disappearing. When the tentacle hit the icy blue projection, it was like a dark red whip. More frighteningly, it even contained a bright silver glow within it. As this glow flashed, it was about to whip the icy blue light apart. However, light suddenly shone brightly from that icy blue light blade. Silver and gold flashed alternately. The temperature in the air dipped. After this, the blade swiped past the tentacle. The evil-eyed tyrant king screamed in pain. One of his tentacles had been chopped off by Hui Yuhao just like that. Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong's figures flashed past just like that. As Hui Yuhao picked up speed, it felt as if he was rushing. However, he still managed to escape from the other tentacles. Rather than using pure strength to fight the evil-eyed tyrant king, it was best to pit his technique against the evil-eyed tyrant king. The tyrant king didn't know Hui Yuhao had the morning dew dagger. He was immediately at a disadvantage the moment they started fighting. However, at the same time, the evil-eyed tyrant king's wrath was awakened. His pupil darkened. After this, a dark red wheel of light appeared at the perimeter of his sea of spiritual power. The sky seemed to shake tremendously. Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong felt as if there were thousands and thousands of spikes piercing their spiritual seas. After this, the spikes began pulling their spiritual seas out of their bodies. What kind of power is this? Hui Yuhao was astonished. It was his first time facing the evil-eyed tyrant king. While his overall powers were inferior to Di Tian, he was undoubtedly the strongest when it came to spiritual power. If it were someone weaker, his spiritual sea would have been stripped from his body. Without a spiritual sea, one would become an idiot. How could he possibly resist then? Fortunately, Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong both had spiritual soul cores. When they felt that immense pulling force on their spiritual seas, their spiritual soul cores quickly shook. Their spiritual power resisted the spikes that had entered. However, even so, they stalled for a moment. This gave the evil-eyed tyrant king the chance to entangle his tentacles over them. However, it was also at this moment that an icy blue glow shone from Hui Yuhao's body. A clear and transparent tuft of grass appeared on his shoulder. It was the star anise mysterious ice grass. Hui Yuhao didn't even need to control it. His spirit immediately fired an attack on his behalf. Star anise omnithrust. Countless ice spikes fired from Hui Yuhao's body. As the tentacles hit the ice spikes, remnants of ice scattered everywhere. However, they were eventually still blocked off, and didn't reach Hui Yuhao or Tang Wutong. A deep blue sword light appeared next. The Snow Empress was standing by Hui Yuhao's side. She used one of her 3 ultimate techniques, Unparalleled Cold. More than 10 tentacles were sent flying by this attack. Although the Unparalleled Cold wasn't as sharp as the Morning Dew Dagger, and couldn't directly cut them off, it still froze them under the effect of ultimate ice. The Ice Empress appeared beside the Snow Empress. Her eyes were shining with jade green light. As she turned around, she revealed her Ice Empress' true body. She hooked her tail up, and a jade-green streak of light shot towards the Evil Eye Tyrant King. Even if Hui Yuhao didn't prepare this soul skill, the Ice Empress could still use it after she gradually restored her origin strength. Right now, it was as if Hui Yuhao had unleashed his martial soul. Eh? The Evil Eye Tyrant King exclaimed once again. He shot out a beam of black light from his pupil. When this beam of light clashed with the streak of green light, countless sparks formed in the air. It was also at this moment that the Ice Empress closed up her pincers tightly. Suddenly, the tentacles that were frozen exploded. She didn't expect her attack to hurt the Evil Eye Tyrant King. She only wanted to get his attention and stall him from dealing with his frozen tentacles. Once this was done, she used her ice explosion technique. The Evil Eye Tyrant King's tentacles were indeed very strong. Even the ice explosion technique couldn't destroy them. Only some purplish blood splattered. Both of you have really infuriated me. The Evil Eye Tyrant King roared in fury. All his tentacles straightened instantly. Right now, Hui Yuhao had only just regained his awareness after recovering from the spiritual attack earlier. He was also astonished to see that every tentacle at the front had a similar-looking eye as the Evil Eye Tyrant King himself. It was just that they were much smaller. Right now, every eye was shining with a strange glow. Apart from the one tentacle that Hui Yuhao had chopped off, the remaining 80 tentacles were all flashing with dim light. Yuhao, be careful! The Snow Empress shouted. At the same time, she turned around and vanished. She turned into a huge patch of snowflakes and disappeared into her surroundings. She proceeded in the direction of the Evil Eye Tyrant King. She was the Snow Empress, ranked third among the 10 great savage beasts. The Evil Eye Tyrant King roared furiously. His 80 tentacles unleashed 80 pure black rays. When they were fired, it felt as if the sky had changed color. The snowflakes that the Snow Empress transformed into danced in the air. They avoided the rays. In any case, the rays weren't aimed at her. They were aimed at Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao could clearly sense the trajectories of the soul rays using his spiritual detection, but he had no way of avoiding them. On a spiritual level, he was eventually still inferior to the Evil Eye Tyrant. Tang Wutong suddenly took a step forward. She came in front of Hui Yuhao and swung her clear sky hammer. This time, the black projection of a giant hammer surfaced behind her. When this hammer appeared, it grew in size along with the wind. Almost instantly, it was more than 100 meters long. It hammered heavily in the air. This was Tang Wutong's clear sky hammer true body. Even Hui Yuhao was only seeing this ability for the first time. Tremendous boom sounded. The entire sky seemed to crack and collapse. A great suction force caused Hui Yuhao and the Evil Eye Tyrant King to shake as they were pulled slightly. The black rays that the Evil Eye Tyrant King had unleashed immediately scattered. However, they only scattered for a moment. At the next instant, they actually disappeared. When Tang Wutong discovered them again, they were already in front of both of them. It was spatial power. The Evil Eye Tyrant King had actually combined his spatial and spiritual power very well. Tang Wutong didn't retreat. She used the hammer to block them. After this, a terrifying intent was unleashed from her body. A golden pattern started to spread on her clear sky hammer. After this, the surrounding space turned silver with the clear sky hammer at the center. After this, the void cracked. This time, the 80 black rays were finally dissipated. This was spatial power too. However, Tang Wutong's spatial power was fused with the ultimate strength of her clear sky hammer. The dissipated black lights blew apart in the air. However, Tang Wutong was still struck by the shockwave. She shuddered, and her clear sky hammer true body vanished. A thought was also transmitted to Hui Yuhao. Spiritual numbness. Tang Wutong shone brightly with golden light immediately after this. It was a sign that she was using her cultivation to fight the Evil Eye Tyrant King. At this moment, the Evil Eye Tyrant King suddenly released a violent and wild intent. Following this, his huge pupil turned fresh red. A giant beam of red light shot out. It was a terrifying beam of light that was around 300 meters long. The snowflakes that the Snow Empress had transformed into were all engulfed within it. It was also approaching Huiyuhao and Tang Wutong. This was the evil-eye Tyrant King's strongest attack. Huiyuhao only felt his spiritual seed being overwhelmed. It felt as if a catastrophic event was imminent. After probing with a few attacks, the evil-eye Tyrant King finally used his strongest attack. The Snow Empress reappeared in front of him. She fused with the Ice Empress. After his, a streak of icy white and jade green combined before they shot out. Compared to the evil-eye Tyrant King's terrifying attack, this streak from the Pride of the Ice and Snow Empresses was only 10 meters long, and was much smaller. However, it protected both Huiyuhao and Tang Wutong. Boom! A tremendous boom echoed in the air. A big hole seemed to have been blown open in the sky. A frightening spiritual intent was unleashed, along with the immense aura of ultimate ice. Spiritual undulations spread everywhere. Broken holes could be seen everywhere in the sky, which took a long time to close. The entire sky shook from the brutally strong intent on display. This was the result of a clash between extremely powerful parties. The Ice and Snow Empresses were only spirits after all, and weren't in their original forms. Otherwise, they might not be afraid of the evil-eye Tyrant King if they teamed up. Right now, they could only use Huiyuhao's strength. Huiyuhao's cultivation was still a little way off from the Snow Empress at her peak. Huiyuhao was a little pale after the clash. His soul power was surging. He still couldn't use the soul power in his dantian that belonged to Long Xiaoyao. As his soul power was being used up, the compressed soul power in his body started to stir. The evil-eye Tyrant King is really strong. However, I can really finally face his attack directly. The evil-eye Tyrant King's next attack didn't arrive immediately. His grim voice echoed throughout the sky. Good, very good. You've actually made the Ice and Snow Empresses part of your strength. This is really unexpected. However, how dare you provoke me given your abilities? Today, this will be your burial ground. His tentacles straightened once again. 80 streaks of black light were unleashed once again, and were once again used for spiritual numbness. This video will end here.